Dr. Jeff Anzalone here. I've been practicing for 20 years and now doing financial coaching for other doctors. And here's the number one financial mistake I've noticed most of them making. It's called the doctor financial trap. Now, I'm going to explain how they get into it in the first place and more importantly, how to get out of it. Now, this is something that I learned from the book years ago reading Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, I don't follow all of his advice, but like some of the other authors that I read, I pick and choose the concepts that I feel is going to work for me and then use them. All right, so let's get into it. So I'm going to explain this in basically 4 different boxes. Now, if you watch some of my videos, you've probably seen me do this before. Now, the first box is your income. So most of us have a job, we have income, then we have expenses, and then we're going to have this here, this, and like this. All right. So again, the first box is going to be your income, which hopefully you know your income. The second is going to be your expenses. So basically money coming in, money going out. Again, you should know what your income is, but here's the thing, 9 times out of 10, when I'm doing this financial coaching, most people don't know what their expenses are. And one of the easiest things that you can do that I started doing years ago is to use a credit card for all of your household expenses. Now, I understand you can't put your mortgage on your credit card, so you can just add that in later when you're calculating this up. So now what you can do, if you have all your expenses on a credit card, you can go to that credit card's website and you can print out monthly or an annual report that's going to give you all of your expenses for your household. Plus, guess what? You're getting credit card points on the things that you've got to buy anyway, right? To live, groceries, gas, that sort of thing. So why not get some benefits from it, right? And then you come down here and we have our balance sheet. This is going to be basically your assets and your liabilities. Assets are something, and again, Kiyosaki talks about this in the book, that most of us don't know the difference between the two. Here's a very easy way to understand it. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out of your pocket. All right. So now let's talk about how most doctors and high income earners, they operate financially. You have your job. Let's say you're a dentist. Okay. You go to your practice, you treat patients, you have an income. Right? So then in your income, then you're going to take your income and you're going to pay for your liabilities. So let's say these are like house. Wait a minute. House is liability? Wait, I thought that's the American dream. That's your best asset there is. Again, most people don't know the difference between an asset and liability. Let me ask you a question. Does your house put money in your pocket? There's your answer. Unless you're renting it out, no, it does not put money in your pocket. Actually, it's one of the biggest liabilities that you have. So you have a house, you have a car, maybe you have private school, boat, that sort of thing, all right? What do all the liabilities kick off? Expenses, right? House, taxes, maintenance, yard care, all those different things. So they're going to have expenses and then kick off like this. So this right here, this is the typical way that most doctors and high income earners operate. All right. Income, pay for the liabilities, which kick off the expenses. This is the trap. Remember the financial trap I talked about earlier? If you understand this right here, then you can start making some changes, okay? Now, so this is how things should work. You should get to the point where if this is your current situation, where you're basically your income is covering your expenses. So this is what I want you to do. You're still gonna have liabilities, you're still gonna have expenses, I get that. But your income down here, when somebody enters this financial trap, a lot of times they don't have enough income to cover their expenses. So what do? They'll come here and they'll use a liability. They'll use like a credit card to cover the expenses. Okay. So yes, you may be a doctor. Let's say you're making $350,000 a year, $350K per year. All right. But remember what I said earlier? A lot of times you don't know what your expenses are. So if you're making $350,000 a year and you don't know what your expenses are and you're using a credit card to charge everything you buy and you're not paying any attention to some type of budget, it's very easy to spend more than you make. So even though you're making $350,000 a year, you may be spending $370,000 a year or more, okay? It's very easy to spend more than you make because you're not paying attention. Guess what? This creates a vicious cycle. So your income starts going towards paying off debts. So, the credit cards, bills, mortgages, and all that. So you're doing that. You're treating patients. If you have a business, you're dealing with customers or whatever, and you're doing this day in, day out, year after year. And before long, you realize that guess what? You've officially started wearing the golden handcuffs. That's right. Yes, you're making great money, but you start to realize when you get out of your training, you're excited, you're buying stuff, you're making good money. You don't really think about it, but then as you get older, start getting kids, work starts wearing you down. That's when you start to realize that, what? Even though I'm making great money, I'm not building any type of sustainable wealth. Sometimes you'll say, well, where's all my money going, And here's the thing. If you stop working, the money stops coming in. If you stop working, the money stops coming in. Sound familiar? It's like being on a hamster wheel. All we're doing is we're working hard day after day to cover our liabilities. That's the trap that you can easily fall into. Guess what? It leads to financial pain, which, as you've been seeing a lot, leads to burnout. So now you understand the number one mistake, okay? It's relying on your income, your active income, where you're going and trading time for money to pay for liabilities and cover your expenses, okay? What can you do? Well, you have two main options. Dave Ramsey, who I was a really big follower, and I still recommend him when you're getting out of your training. He's gonna recommend that, so there's two things that you can do. You can focus on income or expenses. He's going to recommend that you focus on your expenses, right? What does he say? He always talks about living off rice and beans and buy used cars and shop at Goodwill and all that, okay? So he's focused on the expense part of it. Avoid debt, okay? That works, and again, that's going to work, but I also like to focus on the income. Why? Think about it. What you can make a year, your income is limitless. There's no limit. You can make 100,000 a year, you can make $1 million a year, you can make $1 billion a year. The sky's the limit. You can always make more money, but there's only so much that you can cut from your expenses. Again, you have to realize, take a step back and look at Dave Ramsey's target audience. He's for the majority of Americans, right? What are the majority of Americans? They're broke. They have no financial education, they have no financial training, they have no financial plan. And so yes, the best advice for them is to get completely out of debt, never use debt moving forward because they don't understand how to do it, and then keep them on a track, keep them busy, keep them at work for as long as possible till they're 70 or 75 or whatever, and taking a little bit of that money and investing in a 401k along the way. Again, this is great advice for the majority of the people, but not if you're the type of person like me who wants options, such as reaching work optional status much sooner than 60 years old or 60 years old, say by the time you're 50 or whatever. Like I said earlier, the biggest mistake is not knowing these numbers. Most people, they don't even know how much they make after their taxes. And again, they don't know how much they make, or they don't know how much money they're spending, the expenses. So do yourself a favor. Figure out how much you're bringing home after taxes, and then how much you're spending. Okay, to get to where you're going, you need to know where your starting point. So this is your starting point. And then you can go and start putting a plan together. Why? Because you need to invest in your future. Who's going to teach your kids? Society? Good luck with that. It better be you. If you're a high income earner, you should be able to do both. You should be able to have enough discipline, because if you're a high income earner, you've made some sacrifices along the way. You've gone through medical school, dental school, law school, something like that. You understand how to delay gratification. You've got to have some sort of discipline in you, or you wouldn't be where you are right now, right? So you should be able to You should be disciplined enough, which when I got out, I followed the Dave Ramsey debt snowball and all that, but he doesn't recommend, when you're going through the debt snowball and paying off all your debts, smallest to largest, he doesn't recommend that you invest. I didn't want to lose all that compounding interest. So for the first 7.5 years, it took us to get out of debt. I was investing along the way, okay? So again, you should be able to pay off high interest debt and invest at the same time. I did that for the first 10 years of my practice. Again, this goes against Dave Ramsey's advice, but again, who's Dave Ramsey's advice for? The majority of Americans, okay? Now, when I was 40, after practicing for 10 years, I had a snow skiing accident. And when I hurt my hand, it made me realize that, you know what? I couldn't keep operating financially like this, because what happens if you can't use your hands as a dentist? You can't work, right? Kind of hard to work with your feet in people's mouth. They don't want you sticking your foot in your mouth. So by doing this, it eventually led me to looking at what wealthy people do, And what do? They invest in assets. They invest in cash flowing assets like real estate. Okay, remember, easy way to remember this. Assets feed you, liabilities bleed you. It's another way to look at your house. Is your house feeding you or is it bleeding you? For most people, it's bleeding you. Assets put money in your pocket, in your account. Liabilities take money out of your account. We get out of our training, what do? We jump right into the big house, expensive cars, taking these nice vacations. I was actually doing some consulting with a dentist spouse and one of the spouses was a dentist. The other was making six figures a year. Didn't really have much money, and they're taking these $20,000, $30,000 vacations overseas, and they didn't, it's like you don't know what you don't know. They didn't realize that this was just draining them, and they're going to be caught in this financial trap. Okay, again, many people will buy liabilities like the big house that they think that they're assets, but they're not. They're draining your finances every single month. So to build wealth, you have to get assets that generate income. Okay, so here is, and I'll use a different color, here's the cash flow pattern of somebody that's wealthy. They have their job, they're making their income, so now their income is coming down here to invest in assets. The assets are providing them income, passive income, and so now that income can pay for the liabilities. So if something happens to them, get sick, get hurt, or whatever, guess what? They still have the assets providing income, not them, okay? Most of us, we get out of training, myself included, and we think that nothing's gonna happen. We think that we're gonna be healthy enough and life is just gonna be perfect. It's gonna be this perfect road that we can work for the next 30 or 40 years. But guess what? Life is tough. It ain't fair. You may have a sickness, whether you or one of your family members. You could be injured like I was, financial setbacks, periods of recession, lockdowns, COVID stuff. Who would have thought that the nation will be shut down for months and months? All those kind of things can make life unpredictable. I'm urging you as quickly as possible, get to the point where your assets are paying for your expenses. And that, my friend, is when you've reached financial freedom. When you no longer are relying on your active income to cover your costs, you've reached work optional status. It's an absolutely fantastic, great feeling to have. I know there's information all over the place. If you want to get started, I've put a course together. I've got over 300 YouTube videos and over 400 articles. I've taken all of that information and I've put them into a 21 short video course. Most of the videos are 10 minutes or less. In order, if you watch these in order, it will get you up and going to where to make this possible. Okay, I'll put the link below this video. Again, your goal is to have enough assets to cover all of your expenses. So you don't have to work. You don't have to work for money anymore. Your assets do. All right. So if you like this video, make sure that you like it, subscribe to it, share it with somebody who you think would want this information. And if you want to learn about my #1 real estate asset that I personally invest in, check out this video.